On everybody, Chooch here. Been noticing that the general world of carriers could always use a little bit more guidance. I said I've seen plenty of videos from JH showing what he hears through the eyes of the ears of us carriers. Relay back to him. He puts out great information, and sometimes he passes a subject along to a goofy guy, with gel in his hair, and he says, "Hey, put a video out for your carriers, from your perspective, instead of me having to do it the other way around." And I say, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." So, that being said, let's do 5 mistakes that carriers make. Okay. I said I could do a shitload more than 5, but let's keep it at 5, and let's try and get through these, and then maybe we'll add some more along the way, and we'll discuss again. But this is just a list of 5 things that I sat down, thought about, and said, will people agree with me on the carrier side? I would hope so. Will management disagree with me on the management side? I say I certainly hope so, because again, 20 years of carrying, 20 years of knowledge, 20 years of seeing the good, bad, and the ugly. I said, I think I can put together a good summation of what happens to carriers who do things a certain way, and what happens to carriers who do things, a little differently. What's right, what's wrong, what's in between, that's for everybody to decide. But this is me speaking from my opinion, my personal experiences, and, I said, Post Office has their ways, and the carrier who does the job every day, who knows the ins and outs of carrying mail, who goes and gets in that truck, goes and walks those streets every day, does their thing. And, I always preach just due diligence, knowing your rule book a little bit, knowing your rule book a lot these days, and, remembering to keep the human element in it all the time. So, quick list. Number 1, mistakes. Carriers choosing to use tech over their memory for purposes of going about your day and doing your route. So when I say like using your tech to say that the scanner provides you information on your packages and what you have, your scanner allows you to use this great thing called load truck feature. Right, remember that one, fuckers? Excuse my language, but this is something that I embedded into some of my closer carrier friends' heads, and it continues to be kind of an ongoing punchline, when in reality, it's supposed to be a thing that is used every day by every carrier, old and new. And if your management's telling you that that's not part of the deal, they're doing you wrong. They're doing you dirty. So, using the tech to say that your memory is your greatest part of your strength as a carrier, in my opinion. To say that as I'm handling my mail, as I'm looking at the addresses, reading the names, it just stays with you, and you do it through repetition and seeing, and obviously having your own route. If you're a T6, if you're a jumper, if you're a utility, all the same job, just different, all the same job, different titles everybody uses. But you're supposed to kind of have a memory of the 5 routes that you cover, let alone the 1 route. Now, being that I'm in a station that doesn't have a shit ton of routes, but has a good amount of, routes, to say that I can cross-reference things in my head, and people, say like, how the hell do you remember that? And I just said, well, that's one good thing I have going for me. And I think that, keeping your memory banks in play allows you to be a better carrier, allows you to reference things and never have to be putting yourself in question of, damn, did I do that? Did I not do that? Inevitably, we're all going to forget something, and, we might have to backtrack, or we might have to, reference our scanner, pull up and say, oh, I want to make sure I scan that. And obviously, excuse me, the package look ahead feature lets you know throughout your day, what's clear, what's not. But before that, you just more or less just did it all in your head. You loaded your truck in your head. You didn't have to use any tech. And that was always an important part of, like, just saying, this is what makes a better carrier, in my opinion, is always using up here instead of going to this all the time. And, but again, you can't deny technology helps. But my thing is that as somebody, if you get so reliant on technology and you forget to use what's up here, inevitably are ending up, you know, for me, it's to say you become more of a zombie, you become more dependent. You should be able to, first things first, say, I can reference these 20 addresses and these names in my head without having to even think about it. Same goes for like when you're out there and you say, I know I have a package coming up here, here. A lot of people write stuff down, and it's fine. Not everybody, has the the same level of memory that the next person has, and that's fine. But it's good to learn the job off the bat using your brain, using your head. But I can only I can only push that agenda so much today with all the with everybody. It's just a 24/7 AI festival anymore. So it is what it is. But nonetheless, use your memory before you go having to resort to tech all the time. Okay, number 2, properly attempting certified mails. Okay, I know, and and anybody who has somebody who's sub for them knows that certified mails do not get attempted regularly. You're supposed to knock on the door, give the person that you knocked, whose door you knocked on, a good minute, 45 seconds to a minute to come to the door. If they don't, then you are supposed to take your peach slip. We call them peach slips. Some people call them pink slips. But we call them peach slips. You take that form, you fill out the information, and it has a sticky tab on it so you can leave it on the front door. Good place to leave it if you're not leaving it in a mailbox and you're up by the door. You can take and put it in between the front door and the gasket that seals the front door. Put it on the inside of the storm door. Something that you say one way or another, they're going to see that I was up at the door and attempting it. And because when they go to the box, when they see it's in the box and it's far away, you're like, I don't remember that carrier attempting that, because a lot of people like to skip that step. Just saying what I know. Attempt your certifieds. That's time for you. That's time, towards a route. And, you shouldn't just be throwing the peach slip in the box and just moving on to the next thing. You're paid by the hour. You're paid to handle those things properly. So, skipping certifieds, bad idea. You should attempt them. No matter how many you have, you should attempt them all each day. All right. Number 3, shaving time off of your lunch and your 2 breaks to appease management. Appease and management are words that don't go together with me anymore. Yes, everybody in the past would say that, you wanted to just get your day done, meet your time requirements, whatever it may be. But excuse me, I'm still a little hoarse from screaming from the Eagles game. But yeah, giving back any sort of time at this point in the post office's existence is to say that, back in the day when you had piles and piles of mail, there was still very much a scrutiny on time, excuse me, and how much overtime, and, everything is still going through with a fine-tooth comb. But I can't stress enough, and I'm tired of saying it personally, to say that I just can't believe that people want to leave money on the table and breeze through their lunch and their breaks. Like I said, it's 50 minutes total of time, and then you can also say you have another 5 to 10 minutes to gas up your vehicle, take a comfort stop, urinate, whatever it may be. Those are called comfort stops. Those are also time for you to take as a carrier. You do not abuse comfort stops. You take them as needed. You don't take 25 comfort stops. And I hear people say that like shit sometimes. I take as many as I want. I'm like, you just sound like a jackass when you say that, okay? You really do. So stop saying about, I take 15, 25 comfort stops. I'll do whatever I want. Like, don't be so freaking hard-headed, all right? You got to be fair when it comes down to it. Yes, management is a pain in the ass when it comes to certain things, but that's just saying, like, that you're gonna paint a bigger picture of a carrier being a schmuck by saying, I'll take as many comfort stops as I want. All right, again, everything's monitored to a T at this point, and I'm speaking from my point of view to say that, I want a day to end safely. I want a day to be, want to keep busy. I want to get my route done safely, efficiently. I want to get back home to my family, and I want to get my time that is owed to me, which is taking my lunch, stopping work completely for 50 minutes every freaking day. If I got somewhere to be, I don't know. I used to work around that. I used to maybe like cut short. Like I said, not anymore. Never cut short your time. There is not a sustainable enough amount of mail volume coming through to be giving time back to management and killing routes by not taking that time that is given to you that you are supposed to take every day. That should have been top of the list essentially, but I feel like I've said that more than once. So that's number 3. That's a huge mistake if you're doing that. All right, the biggest mistake. All right, number 4, not separating your 3M mail on the street. Your 3M mail is your missorts, your missents, and your missequence. So as you're moving throughout your day, you will come across mail that does not belong on your route. It might be for out of town. That's a missent. It might be for another route in your station. That's a missort. It might be for your route, but it's not in proper order. Missequence. You're supposed to take those pieces and separate them. Sometimes you might be provided with a tray that has a little 3 separations in it, and you put each one in each. I said, I have my system, which is essentially rubber banding and endorsing. You're supposed to endorse unable to forward, vacant, whatever it may be. And then you have everything saved in a tub, in a half tray, whatever it may be that you use to separate your mail while you're working on the street. That's also part of street duty time. And unfortunately, I know from listening and watching, from my point of view, from watching on the internet, from hearing certain things come from other people, to say that they just kind of just put it all into a tub, and at the end of the day, they just clump it up and pop it off into the return area, mishmashed. It's supposed to be separate. That's a professional way of handling your mail. And the next day, the clerks take that mail, and sometimes it may end up in the wrong spot. But for the most part, you'll see that in your letter tray the next day for what was missequenced. You'll have the missorts will be sorted out. So the next day, those people are getting their mail in your station, and the missents will go to, Kansas or something, wherever the hell they were from. But inevitably, you'll see them every day, and you should be handling them properly every day and not just clumping it all together into one big mess. Now, if you want to take the time on the street to do it all in one shot, like toward the end of your day, and you're using your 10-minute break, technically, people do that, but your 10-minute break is your time to do what you choose to, but you shouldn't be working for your 10-minute break. You should be taking a breather, checking your emails, whatever it may be, safely, obviously, off to the side or the road, doing whatever you may do. I said, I take the two breaks in the same 2 spots every day. It's kind of what you're supposed to do. Management's supposed to have designated areas for you to take your breaks, 3 lunch picks where you usually go, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So that's not the worst thing in the world, but that's definitely on the list, okay? And last but not least, number 5, properly maintaining your red book in the office and your cluster boxes out on the street, along with your regular mailboxes, whether they be door deliveries, whether they be curbside deliveries, to say that if a box is overstuffed with mail and you just keep adding to it, or if a carrier marked the box vacant, maybe put a little tag in there and you're just throwing mail on top of it. That's another thing that it's just, I've seen it over the years. Some people pay attention to what they're doing out there. Some people just kind of fire it on top of the next piece. And like I said, I'm not referencing current times. I think that, people do better once they've been around the mail more and they handle the mail more. But inevitably, I've found, when I've covered some other routes in my time, and I've had stories shared with me from other carriers that I speak to on a regular basis from all over the country, and they say, oh my God, I had my vacation, I came back, and the route was just a mess. And it's like, this is so expected all the time, and it's just like, to me, I'm just so tired of hearing the same repetitive bullshit all the time, because simply it's like someone's not doing their job. Okay. And we always say management, management, management. And I said, well, not always necessarily. I said carriers need to do their job too. So maintaining the red book in the office. Number one, you have to be given time to maintain your red book. Management might say, you use your AM office time to update your red book, and that red book is supposed to go down to AMS, address management systems, every month, like on the 20th day of the month or whatever day. So you're supposed to keep them up to date, and management is supposed to send them down. And you're essentially supposed to mark off any new vacants, remove anything that was vacant and is occupied, any new additional stops that you have, new construction, a business that changed hands and now has a different name. You can edit on your case labels. These are things that carriers are supposed to do and keep up with every month. So you have inside the office. You also have the forwarding tags, and little white peel and stick stickers that tell you that a customer is a forward. And you're supposed to take those stickers, and we have these pink cards, that you apply those stickers to. And I know some people probably have thousands of them at their case. Some people might have so many because you might have a residential route where not a lot of people move. But nonetheless, part of the carrier duties to take those stickers, apply them to there. I said, sometimes they can get piled up at a case, and you want to make sure that you're just constantly keeping track of your forwards. And you can make notes for your subs, to say this person's a forward, this person's not. Like, again, you can't force anybody to do something specific to saying, you should always have a note filled out for your sub. You should have a note filled out for yourself, unless, like I said, you use your memory. You don't really need a lot of notes, but inevitably you're going to have your time off, and you want your route to be covered professionally, and you want to at least say, hey, I did my part to make sure that the people covering my route had a point of reference. So if you're not doing that, that's to me is a mistake that a lot of carriers make. And it's, again, these are things that I know why I'm successful as a carrier. I know why it's a reflex at this point for me. I know that guys that have been doing it a long time can be stingy and say, well, I don't do this and I don't do that. And that's fine. I said, I understand that everybody has a certain attitude, has a certain method, has a certain way. Some people could be downright sloppy, you can't really write somebody up for being sloppy. You can't write somebody up for being too neat. I personally, I said, organization in my outside life translates to my work life, and vice versa. And again, I like symmetry. I like things to be organized. Maybe I'm a little OCD, but I would love if everybody could just be OCD, because then I think the world would be a much cleaner and more organized place. People by nature are sloppy people, and again, to each his own. But I don't know. I just said it's pretty crazy sometimes. Like, what you can turn your head one way and say, like, what the frick is going on over there, and then you say, well, look how nice and organized that is over here. Which one would I prefer? I said, I'm going over to the organized side. So that's pretty much just a couple of things, and I hope that there's a good response to it. But at the same time, if you want to sit there and say, Chooch, you're old school, and you're talking about people don't want to do that anymore. I said, I can only translate, so much, but I can tell you this much, that if the post office and management and the carriers that are coming in, want to just kind of wing it, and care more about the numbers instead of the customer service and the duties that you are supposed to perform and the time you are supposed to take to do the duties, then we just continue to trend downward. And I don't like to see us trend downward. I'm trying to get people to do something just a little bit better, a little bit more diligent, a little bit more professional. Again, lose the TikTok and get the hell off the phone when you're working. I said, pay attention to the work that you're doing, even if it's not your route. It's the only way to keep things somewhat orderly in an otherwise very chaotic time right now where, again, management is locked in on time. They don't seem to really care much about customer service anymore. And that's a damn shame. And I'll continue to say it. Mr. Steiner, Postmaster General, all you guys up top or whatever, you lose the customer service thing. You see that the public's trust is being eroded because of the hiring, because of what's going on currently, where, you see a news story on any given day or week about mail being destroyed, mail being hidden, carriers losing arrow keys. So there's so much shit. And it's just like, man, we got to look at this hiring thing. Once again, we got to look at this hiring and we got to do better. You have to do better. You at the top, the people calling the shots, along with the union, to say we agree on what is going to be our future and who we're going to bring in to do the job. Then, if I can't say what I'm saying here and let it convey to anybody coming in to say, hey, this guy gave some good tips on being organized. And I want to believe what I'm saying is a very positive message to say, let's get some things in better order here. Order is everything. And the post office is a very out of order system right now. I mean, it works because the carriers who make it work, plain and simple. I believe that wholeheartedly. The carriers who come in and do the shit right and care about the work that they're doing are the base to everything working, plain and simple. I give credit to certain management for, keeping the mail moving. And then I hear a lot of stories about the mail not moving, and a lot of things just are very, from coast to coast. It's a very, very wishy-washy thing to say that, I have resources ranging from far out west, down south, north of me, east of me, west of me. I talk to a lot of carriers, and I get a lot of good feedback from people on here. Of course, have the wonderful outlet of JH to pass on great information to me and just continually do what he does. Me and Mailman Nick going to be talking hopefully at over the weekend about a little Table 1, Table 2 talk, being that obviously we both are those different carriers, but inevitably Nick and I have a great rapport, and we're going to talk a little bit more about things that, make us alike, make us different, and inevitably, make us all carriers that want to succeed. So we'll be getting into that more, and just appreciate everybody who made some nice comments about my daughter doing her thing at the Eagles game. My live didn't work out very well. I still got to get the hang of certain things when it comes to lives, but nonetheless, it was a great day. I did load up a short with my daughter, and I was going to put a little bit more of a photo montage for people to see. It was just an amazing thing. Thank you to the Eagles and the Autism Foundation for that. I want to do a whole separate video on that. But in the meantime, I hope you take this information and use it well. Appreciate everybody listening. And once again, what I say on here, I speak on my behalf, not on the behalf of the Postal Service. These are my opinions, my experiences. I appreciate you checking this out. Like, subscribe, and thanks very much for listening. Have a good night, everybody. Peace.